Welcome to Alignment First, where we're on a mission to bring leaders back to their peace, presence, and power. And I've got the honor and the privilege to sit with Shawn Richards, the founder of Blue Sky Business Consulting and host of the Team Engagement podcast. He's on a mission to empower leaders to maximize their investment in human capital. And shout out to Daniel Knight and the Unicorn Universe Network for putting us together. Shawn, I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk about leadership and teams anytime. So this is great.
Yeah. I mean, we had such a really great riff session, a couple of weeks ago with regards to, how to really get the most out of our teams and develop leadership. And it was really interesting to me, bouncing ideas back and forth, your frames, our frames, et cetera, and what brings out the best in leaders. And as a byproduct of said leadership, the teams and organizations downstream as well. Out of curiosity, where does because you obviously have quite the resume and business acumen, but where does the genuine interest in people, as you in Blue Sky terms, human capital, come from for you?
That's a great question. I have pondered on that. I don't know how many times over the years. Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I do it both constructively and sometimes just in those moments of just quiet reflection. But I have found that I have a genuine love for people. I want to see people succeed. And if I were to add one more perspective on it, we live in a world that is sometimes a little dark, and we have people that really are struggling beneath the surface. We don't always see it. And I think that leaders and people in general have an opportunity to make a positive impact and have a positive influence on the world and the people around them by learning how to be effective leaders. And there's a lot of different strategies on how to do that. But ultimately, that's what leadership is. It's about influence. It's about helping people and really empowering others to become the best version of themselves in any setting. From a more technical standpoint, we spend a third of our lives working roughly, and that's in the if you're not retired or something like that, but you're spending about a third of your life in the workplace. Let's have it be a great place to go. Let's have it be a place where people can collaborate and get along and have a fun time doing productive things. And so for me, that's really kind of the driving force behind everything I do when it comes to leadership.
And you spent time as a CEO and CFO, correct? The occupying those two seats in the C-suite. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly a CEO of my own company, but in the past I have been operations and finance, primarily in smaller businesses, but certainly in my mind where it's almost needed most when you're trying to help a company grow and really be more effective in what they're trying to do with people.
Yeah. So in your own personal / professional endeavors, what was like the moment or the awakening that you had that called you to step out of conventional business and step into this role as of consultant?
Great question. I think for me, it really was a slow awakening. Think about that sunrise that's kind of coming up very gently over a period of time. As I was working with clients, mainly as a business consultant, I saw such a great need for leadership. And it wasn't that the people I was working with were doing a poor job. I could just see where there were some opportunities for improvement, and there were some opportunities to empower what you might call the younger generation, or those up and coming leaders that weren't quite ready for the C-suite just yet, but there was an opportunity to get them ready in preparation for growth and maybe even an exit. And so there's different situations there. And I think for me, over time, over the last several years, this started years ago, but I would say the last several years, especially, frameworks have come to mind, and I've written books, and I've got different things now. The podcast is certainly one of them as well. Yeah. And it's been a fun journey to just really look at what I can do to contribute in my own way to leadership and to the people around me. And so for me, it's been a gradual process, but a really enjoyable one.
Yeah, no, 100%. The the terminology of human capital, let's define that in blue sky terms,
Sure.
so that the energy with which we receive that phrase is received in the best light possible. So we don't,
Sure.
because what I don't want is for anybody who who is just embarking on this journey. I don't want them to take the term human capital and make this connection to something that is transactional.
Right. Human capital is really, when you think about any kind of capital, you're using it to increase or improve something else, like a company. Let's use that analogy. And when we look at human capital, that's not something that will show up on the balance sheet or your profit and loss statement. And yet it's one of the biggest expenses. If you look at it as an expense, if you choose to do that, I'm one that says, yeah, you can see it right on their payroll or, 1099 payments, whatever it is. I choose and encourage others to not look at it as an expense, but think of it, even though it does not show up on the balance sheet, think of it as one of your greatest assets in your company. The people power, the ability to create, innovate, promote the brand, and really engage with your clients and your customers. That's where the human capital really comes into play. And so for me, it's helping to really instill that sense of people are important, and everybody, no matter their role, no matter their title, no matter their age, their gender, their experience, everybody has something to contribute. Everybody has a perspective that can be beneficial if you learn how to create a sense of team and company-wide collaboration, innovation, psychological safety. I mean, we could go on all day about the different ways that this happens, but that's really what human capital is about. It's not just about hiring the individual and making it this transactional, okay, go do this job and that's it, go home and enjoy your paycheck. It's really about what can we do to harness and really augment the ability for people to contribute in a very meaningful way.
Yeah. What I'm noticing in the leaders we serve is a shift from the conventional legacy Fortune 500 org chart that is very pyramidal and hierarchical, and something that is more, dare I say, fluid and dynamic, where it seems so much more like the constructs we have in the Marine Corps, where we really, really thrive on this concept of small unit leadership, where at any tier, really and truly, any one leader is only communicating directly with 3 to 4 people tops. And then that kind of filters on downstream, where it really empowers people to own their role and gives them an opportunity to innovate, streamline, create efficiency, etc., at their level without the necessity to ask for permission upstream and create that lag. You're seeing such a much more agile organizational structure as new businesses are being created and or acquired to serve a bigger mission. Is that congruent with what you're experiencing in with Blue Sky?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the great realizations that we've had in the world and in societies around the world is that larger teams are not necessarily the best. It's not the best option. Now, of course, there's a lot of debate within the leadership community about what constitutes a large team. Is it 20, 30, 40? Is it 10? What is the optimal size? I don't know that there's an exact number. I like your number of 3 or 4 because it allows for a lot more intimate and very focused discussion and collaboration and whatnot. Some other organizations, they may get up to 10 or 15. And there are lots of different folks that say that 10 or 15 is about the max. And I tend to be one of those that say that's the maximum. And if you can create organizational structure that allows you to have smaller teams, say that 3 to 7 person range, I believe that that's really optimal, because in my sense of leadership, leaders really need to get to know their people fairly well.
Yep.
And it's hard to do that when you've got 20 or 30 people that you're trying to lead. And when you have just a smaller group, let's call it 5, just a nice even number, you can really get to know them. You can get to know their strengths. You can get to know what motivates them. You can get to know how they contribute. And when you can do that, you can really operate effectively if you understand that about each other.
Yeah. Where I feel like that is most effective is in terms of communication up and downstream.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's to oversimplify it. You're operating on a need to know basis, but the door is always open, right? There's full transparency, but at the same time, before it's more important that I know what I'm not allowed to do, or than it is for me to ask for permission around what my next step is.
Right. Yeah. Well, we have kind of these guardrails, I'll call them. You think of a road, we have these guardrails, but you've got 3 or 4 lanes within that you can move and move a little faster, a little bit slower, depending on what you need to be able to do as a team. But you always know what the guardrails are. Yep. And okay, we cannot step outside of that, but we can move around within. And that's where a leader, if they learn how to really effectively communicate that and set those guardrails, set the expectations, and then manage those as they're moving along the highway there, if you want to continue with the analogy. But it allows them to make, minor corrections as necessary, but people really know what to expect, because that is one of the big killers of team effectiveness is confusion, is uncertainty, is not, we don't know what to do. We don't know we're allowed to do, what we're not supposed to do. We don't know when we have to go to the boss for approval, when we don't. There's just so much there that can be communicated. And some of that will just come through experience, but a lot of that can be explained and managed from the very beginning of when you're organizing a team or hiring or whenever it is. And that's really going to make a big difference when you empower people to just know what the parameters are and then unleash them. Just let them go. Yeah. That's the awesome part, in my opinion, to see what they can do.
In your experience, what is the number one most common point of failure in leadership?
Failure to communicate effectively. I think that's part of the challenge. When you're the leader, you think you're communicating effectively. You think you're getting the word out. But so many times leaders are disappointed to find out that the message was not received in the way they intended, either because there was a breakdown in the communication, the email didn't get through, or something simple like that, or there's simply a misunderstanding or perhaps an inconsistency between language and words. We use this idea of what makes an effective team. And Michael, you might have a definition for that. I might have a definition for that. Part of what a leader really needs to do is to effectively communicate to and with the team. What do we consider an effective team to be? And really make that clear. Have a really good picture in mind so that we know, hey, this is what we consider to be high standards for our team, because everybody's going to come in with a different perspective. And that's one of the big things that leaders need to really do, is effectively communicate. And we could spend days just talking about that, because there's so much to it.
Yeah.
But that's the number one thing I would say is learn how to communicate effectively.
Where does that education, exercise, and practice really begin?
It begins at the beginning when you hire somebody and you set those established parameters, but it can't just be that. It just can't. Think of, I imagine myself as a new employee in an organization. Doesn't even matter the size of it, but you're going to be overwhelmed with a lot of new information. You've got new job title, maybe. You've got new people that you're getting to know. You have new responsibilities. You're just trying to figure things out. I mean, half the time, new employees are just trying to figure out, hey, where do I get a paperclip, for crying out loud?
Right.
Yep. They're just trying to figure that out, and they're not always going to remember the orientation that they went through. You definitely have to have it. I'm not saying don't have the orientation, but you've got to follow it up. And you mentioned the word practice. I am a big proponent of team gatherings. You can call them meetings if you want, but really the opportunity to get together on a fairly regular basis. It might be monthly, it might be quarterly, whatever you feel like is best for your team. But to get together and talk about these exact things, and you don't have to beat a dead horse, but to continually revisit, hey, are we at our level of excellence and effectiveness that we expect ourselves to be? Why or why not? And really just continue to communicate that and to practice it. And okay, is this what we're doing here? Maybe there's a conflict. You can practice conflict resolution, or maybe not wait for it to actually happen, but have some of those tools in place ahead of time so that everybody can have a better experience if and when something does come up. So yeah, great question. It's an ongoing process. It can't just be a one and done scenario.
Where does identity fall into this whole thing? Because you love the word practice the way I love the word practice. And I truly believe that leadership is 100% an ongoing practice, depending on the demands, the scope of the vision, etc. You're going to be called to a higher version of yourself in order to execute that mission. And not to get too in the weeds on Marine speak here.
That's all right.
But when we talk about like business, it often sounds like a militaristic operation, and if you're not that person yet, you're in that evolutionary period of becoming, right? And this is something that I experienced in my entrepreneurial journey. As a military kid, I always had this benefit of starting over, recreating identity every 3 years. All the mistakes that I made in a previous unit at my old school or whatever, well, I'm not going to be in Japan in 3 years. I'm going to be in Montgomery next summer. Okay, who do I want to be? And I can just immediately step into that, right? With all the hindsight and lessons learned from this previous experience, only to be slapped in the face with the reality that if I want to build next level and I want it to grow and I'm required to evolve to make that happen, well, guess what? Everybody gets to watch me fumble through this, mess it up, and be actively engaged in this practice of leadership in real time along the way. And one of the unfortunate consequences of sitting in that evolution and not having the luxury of a change of scenery, a new environment all the time, well, at a regular rhythm, is people remember the old you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wait, it was just a gym. What's all this leadership and character development stuff? Like, and I found myself periodically paralyzed and frustrated with having to over explain as the business was maturing and a new upgraded version of Michael was required to move it forward. How real is that? Because that was just a massive slap in the face as the reality of building a business and what was required to stay in it and legitimately play the long game.
A great question, because identity is something that I think all of us struggle with because it evolves and it changes. And we do have to revisit that. And we have different little parts and dimensions to our own lives. You and I were talking right before we started the podcast here that we have kids, and so there's the role of a parent, there's a role of a spouse, there's a role of a business owner, there's the role of a leader in a different capacity. Maybe it's in your community or your church or it's in your business, but we have these different dimensions. And so this idea of identity kind of shifts and moves a little bit. I am a huge proponent of helping individuals and organizations identify really key elements: values,
Mm-hmm.
vision, mission, purpose. Those are really important elements to understand about yourself
Yep.
and to understand about the people around you, and of course for the organization that you're working for or with. Because when we understand that about ourselves, the more we understand about ourselves, the more rooted we are, the
Mm-hmm.
more on a kind of a sure foundation we can build on, and then adjust accordingly. Because you're right, you go to let's take an example of somebody that takes a new job at a new company. They had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of success. They might even have been recognized publicly for their success.
Yep.
And then they change gears and they have to, in a sense, start over.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they're still kind of holding on to that old identity a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good. And that can also be detrimental if they're holding on too much to the old style of doing things without evolving to this new position.
Mm-hmm.
It can backfire. It might work, but if you don't have that identity, if you're not rooted
Yeah.
to your values and so on and so forth, you're going to struggle. You're going to, okay, what do I have to become now? But if you know that about yourself and you're confident about that self, it
Mm-hmm.
evolves naturally, and you just make minor adjustments and course corrections for the situation that you're in.
Yeah. So try this on and see how it fits. In our practice and guiding leaders, who we serve is as entrepreneurs, executives, and business leaders. They're the shot callers. They're the ones guiding this mission and this vision. And in the beginning, a large portion of them were technicians who created a specialty inside of somebody else's big machine and decided to take that and create their own deal. And their reference point, shout out to Tiffany, she gave me this wisdom in a previous conversation. Their reference point is their existence as an employee and all the moving pieces that they thought made that big machine go. So they start almost this friction riddled process of trying to paint by numbers and recreate with their own spin, their own flavor, this thing that existed somewhere else. And where we often come in is they create this beast. It's printing money. It's successful. It's profitable. It's all the things that on paper, like, you're killing it. Great job. And it's the narrative that where they're experiencing the most friction is, I'm doing this for my family, but I'm losing my family in the process. Or I'm letting my health go by the wayside, even though I've got more means than ever before in my life. How's that even possible? And the guidance that we give these leaders is take a beat, get this thing as stable as it needs to be so that you can really identify and then focus on the shit that really matters in your universe, across the spectrum of health, wealth, relationships, and time. And then pour into that as much as possible without compromising the vehicle that is your business. And then once you have a clear picture as to what that looks like at its highest and best, every business decision that you make moving forward is to insulate that. And from an entrepreneurial perspective, it's really interesting, the energy shift that we see in our clients. Like, wait a minute, I can do that? Like, yes. And as a matter of fact, you should.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, the X's and O's of business, the principles of profitability remain the same. However, how you execute those, who you put in what seats, what hats you wear, are so different once you have an eye on what really matters to you. And it's such an interesting aha that we see on a regular basis with our clients, because it's like, it's not that they didn't know they couldn't they didn't know they could do that. They weren't giving themselves permission to do so because because of that sunk cost fallacy. I've made it this far. How the question that they're afraid to ask because they're afraid of the answer is, if I take a peek in that closet, and I'm mixing all kinds of metaphors right now. If I take a peek in that closet, how long is it going to take me to course correct this battleship? And what we've experienced is it doesn't take a whole lot. But what it does require is sitting still for a minute to figure it out.
Yes. Well, the word that I would use, or the phrase I would use to describe what you're describing, is work-life balance, and balance is it's a fun word. It's sometimes an annoying word because it's very elusive. Have we ever really found true balance in something, in life, in work, whatever it is? But that work-life balance, it's a teeter-totter. It's always doing this, it's going back and forth, back and forth. But as you pointed out, sometimes people start letting it do this. And now we're tilted, and it's a lot more energy to get it back up to here. And so it feels like it's this massive upheaval sometimes when they're so far out of balance that it takes a lot more effort to get back in balance. And that's why this idea of ongoing conversations is so critical, not just with your team members, although it may need to include them, but with yourself, with your spouse, with your kids. Hey, how are we doing? Am I, I'll use me as an example because I'm a dad. So I'll say to my wife, how's our marriage doing? Am I there in the way that you need me to be there? If she's not feeling it, then we need to have a conversation about what I need to do. And then similarly with our children, just, it doesn't have to be anything serious. It can be a fun little thing. If I'm taking my daughters out to lunch, hey, how are things going? Anything that you want to talk to me about? It can be a lot of different things, but having that good connection, your family will let you know. And hopefully on the flip side of that, your team members, the people that you're leading in your organization, they'll let you know, hey, yeah, Shawn, it seems like you're not here as often as we need you to be here. Okay, well then let's address that. And let's talk about what's going on. Because as a leader, that's going to happen, whether it happens with you and your family, it likely will. But don't forget, it's also going to happen with your employees. We all are going through these evolutionary changes in life. There are going to be times when maybe Susan needs to take a little bit more time because she's got a situation with one of her children. Who knows? And so helping, and that's what's great about team, is that you can kind of work together to help take care of each other when situations like that come up. But going back to the leader and that work-life balance, that is so critical. And you and I have talked about this, but it's difficult. And when you're working with the entrepreneur and the business owner, especially, sometimes it can be hard for him or her to really understand. Do you see the path that you're on? And it could derail these really important things over here. And so, when you're building a business and you're focused on the business, and rightfully so, sometimes you have to put a little more extra effort into it. But if you don't have a plan in place for leadership development to delegate out appropriately, you're going to end up just growing this big behemoth company that's maybe doing really well financially, but you're still doing everything. And now you're working 70, 80 hours a week, just trying to keep up. And that's not how anybody wants to live their life, is my guess. So, I know I don't.
No, 100%. And I appreciate the fact that you're able to have those conversations with your significant other. And I think that is so critical in this game of leadership, is making sure that what we call in next level speak, your agreements are as up to date and upgraded as necessary in the evolution of both the individual and the relationship. Like I'll never forget this critical moment for my wife and I, because I've got a huge social battery, and like this exchange you and I are having, any networking opportunity, like put me in the room, like people just fill my cup. And that is not my wife's dynamic. And we came out of a season where we were in business together, and then she's mom. That's where her priorities are, is with our 9 and 7-year-old. And rightfully so. And one of the upgrades that we needed to make beyond roles and responsibilities in that regard was I wanted her at all of these events that I get invited to. And I get invited to so many. And I want her with me to have these experiences. And like, you know, we're going to meet so many cool people and none of that shit jazzes her up, you know,
Does not connect. That's right.
and it's not that she's not supportive, right? Like that is so far from it. But if she had the choice to either be with the kids at home or be out shaking hands and kissing babies with me, like the answer is very obvious. And with that, I had to express to her that it made me sad. And her response to me was, well, I'm sad because you're sad. And I was like, I'm not telling you I'm sad because I want you to be sad with me. This is not a misery loves company thing. I'm just letting you know that I really want you with me at these things. Like that means a lot to me. And the upgrade to our agreement in this regard was I have her permission to continue to extend the invitation without the expectation.
Great example. Yeah.
Keep going. And it was massive. Like, you know, I had my moment. I'm like, what does this need to look like? You know, are we on the same page? Are we moving in the same direction? Like all of those things, all of those, if you don't have the conversation, the hurricane that your brain will create between your ears is so wild. When really and truly it's like, hey, you know, Michael, I'm on your team. I love you. I support you. I can't be at everything all the time in the way that you want me to be. Fair enough. Then what does it need to look like moving forward? One, so that I feel supported, and two, you're also able to take care of yourself and continue to make yourself a priority as well. So that as a means to for us to show up at our highest and best for each other.
Yeah, some great comments you made there, because that's exactly what needs to happen on an ongoing basis is regular. Hey, how are we doing? What do we need to tweak? What do we need to adjust? What do we need to shift in order to continue to be effective? Because I can almost guarantee you, because I'm about 15 years ahead as far as with my kids of where you're at, it'll shift again when you become empty nesters. You know, that 7-year-old is about 11, 12 years from now, and they're at school, and all of a sudden you and your wife are sitting there. She's going to be looking at you going, you know what? I think maybe I'm ready to engage a little bit differently with you now and maybe go to some of those events. And that's a good thing. And that's what all of us experience. And that's what makes leadership so powerful. And if we don't see this as much in society and in work organizations as much, where people are at a single company or organization for more than maybe 10 years. But imagine if it were a 10 to 15 to 20 year period where you are working with the same people in that same environment. Well, my goodness, a lot's going to happen with families and relationships and life. People are going to pass away. There's maybe divorce. There's different things, health concerns. A lot of things can happen in a decade of life.
Yeah.
Something else that you mentioned that caught my attention right towards the beginning and all through your comments. I'm a big proponent of strengths-based leadership and development, really understanding yourself. And sometimes one of the blind spots that any of us have, because something comes so naturally to us, we think that's what everybody else will likewise think and respond to and behave. You and your wife are a demonstration where sometimes we just have to communicate that, hey, that's not my thing, or at least it's not my thing right now. For you, that's your jam. You like to be out there with society and shaking the hands. That's where you get energy. For her, she'd rather be over here for at least for right now with the
Mm-hmm.
kids. And that's where her strength is at right now. That's where her
Right.
focus is, her energy. And
Mm-hmm.
the two of you together, of course, have agreed, yes, this is where we want her to be.
Yeah.
And we're okay with it. And that may change. And she's in the driver's seat on that. She can decide when to kind of step in a little bit more. But the idea here is that we all bring different strengths, different contributions, different ways of doing things, and that's a really good thing.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to be careful that we don't let that general blind spot of, because I do it this way, everybody else will want to do it this way,
Yeah.
or they're going to think that approach. That can trip up a lot of people very quickly.
Well, dude, I can tell you, man, you know, I made the mistake. I learned the lesson. Let me use better language there. I learned the lesson that in building this organization and who sits in what seats, there can only be, I feel like this is like Highlander, there can be only one, you know, next level only needs one Michael. Right. And the hard lesson that I've learned a couple of times along the way is when you intentionally bring on more of you for all of your superlatives, you also get the blind spots and pitfalls as well.
Right.
And it wasn't until I got that coaching, it's like this is why you're so damn frustrated. Like,
yeah,
everybody, everything is great and everybody's happy, and you're not hitting your numbers, and follow up is suffering, and da. It's like, oh fuck, that's because like they're all me. I have to do different things, obviously, because as a leader and driver of the vision, and at the same time, there's nobody that is strong in those support roles that are not your strengths. Oh, you know. So what are some mechanisms that can help leaders? Because I remember asking this question at Thunderbird as we were going through our familiarization week, and we had all like department heads and stuff like that come in and talking and telling us about, you know, what they specialize in and their experience and how to max out this experience. And I remember asking them, is this one of those programs where as an entrepreneur, I should leverage it to fill those gaps? Or am I better suited going all in on my strengths and leveraging the program that way? And the resounding consensus was go all in on your strengths, because as the builder of an organization, to stay in your highest and best use, your genius, that's going to move the needle the most consistently. And you're going to bring on that supporting cast who love what they do the way that you love what you do.
Yes. If you don't mind the resume plug here for just a second, I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. Mm-hmm. So years ago, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, I became just absolutely enamored with Gallup's Strengths Finder or Clifton Strengths assessment that helps people to identify that. And that was kind of the beginning of my journey of strengths-based leadership development, because there were so many things about my own self that I understood I'd never clearly understood before. I mean, it sounds like, boy, how can you be 40 something, which is how old I was back then, and not know this about yourself? But it wasn't that I didn't know it. It was that I didn't recognize it and couldn't necessarily articulate it to others. Mm-hmm. And going through that process of becoming a certified coach with them, I've become far more aware, self-aware, aware of where my strengths are, how to communicate them, where they show up, and where the blind spots are in those areas that I'm not as strong in and need some help from others that do have that. And when you learn to look that way at your team, at the people that you lead, boy, it can change a lot. It can change how you perceive people. You start to look at people and you don't see, well, this person's deficient in this and they don't do this very well. It changes your mindset. You start seeing, hey, here's what I see about Shawn. And he's stronger in these areas. Where can we plug him in to help him be successful in that area that will help us?
Right.
and you start to think differently. And you also recognize, okay, well, they're strong in this, kind of a very dominant presence in a meeting or something like that. When you understand that, that can also generate patience, because sometimes I'm the type in a meeting, I'm what's called an includer. I like to hear from everybody. I want everybody's
Yeah.
opinion. I may
Mm-hmm.
not agree with all of them. I may have already made my decision, but I still want to hear about it,
Right.
because they may have some kind of an insight that I did not think of. And I'd never want to
Mm-hmm.
miss out on that opportunity to have someone else provide a perspective I hadn't thought of. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why, for me, getting more people involved is very important to me. I'm always sensitive, and I didn't realize this until I went through the training,
Yeah.
that if I'm in a meeting and I notice that someone's especially quiet, I'll make sure that they have some kind of an opportunity to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of thought, oh, that's just kind of, it doesn't everybody do that. But I realized that that was part of the reason why, was because for me, I am watching people, and
Yep.
and I'm kind of like, okay, why is Debbie being so quiet? I'll bet she's
Mm-hmm.
got something important to say, or maybe she's got a contrary opinion
Yep.
that is worth listening to. And she's a little bit nervous about bringing it up. So let's say, what do you think? And
Yep.
there's a lot of layers to that, but I really do believe, you can tell I get very passionate
Mm-hmm.
about this, because I really do believe that everybody has something to contribute. But those that get down on themselves start to doubt that. You go, I'm not like Michael. I'm not like Shawn. I'm not like this person or that person. You don't have to be. You
Right.
just need to understand how you contribute, what your
Mm-hmm.
strengths are. And yes, as you said earlier, Michael, go all in on that.
Yep.
Learn how to develop, learn how to add skills that complement your strengths, so on and so forth. It's such a powerful, enlightening moment to realize, this is how I show up. This is how I contribute.
Yep.
That's what we want to learn about ourselves, and that's what we want to build on. And that helps us to enjoy our roles, our lives in general, as
Yep.
well as how we can help others.
Yeah. Going back to this communication piece, I'm genuinely curious, because I'm in the first chapter of Napoleon Hill's book, Outwitting the Devil. Are you familiar?
Anyway, it's been a long time since I've read it, but
Okay.
yes.
This is my third go at it. In probably the last 10 years. And it's in my top 5.
Good book.
For everybody, is specifically leaders, to take a look at.
Sweet.
And what's interesting, going back to this whole identity communication thread, what is it about the position, the title, the status of leaders that makes them reluctant or inhibits their willingness to ask for help or express vulnerability, either to their significant others, their stakeholders, and or the organization at large?
It's such a great question, because boy, that plagues just about everybody. I don't know what it is about a promotion and or title that suddenly makes us think that that person, whether it's us or someone else,
Mm-hmm.
they suddenly know everything. They get promoted or hired into that role, and all of a sudden they know everything. That doesn't make sense. How could they? They're brand new at it.
Right.
And so we have to be willing to acknowledge that in ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
in others. We have those situations where, I say this delicately, jerk bosses.
Yeah.
We have those bosses that we just don't get along with. And sometimes, not always, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's a result of them not wanting to appear vulnerable or weak, or that they don't have the answers. I love the phrase, and it's, for me, it was hard at first, but now I
Yeah.
love saying it when it comes up. Somebody will ask me a question, I'll sit there and I'll think, and I'll go, I don't know the answer to that question, but let me see what I can find out, and maybe we can work on it together. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Because there is no, our society is getting better at this, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be, and I'm an older guy, but it used to be back in the, the 80s and the 90s, that leaders were expected to have all the answers.
Right.
And we're starting, it's taken us, that's a long time. We're talking 30, 40 years here, but we're starting to see a shift where we don't expect that. We don't put that pressure on them, but we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's one of those. I've even said, I've added one other word into that phrase I used a second ago. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm confident we can find the answer.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is what people need to hear is,
Mm-hmm.
we don't know yet. We don't know, but we will.
Mm-hmm.
I'm confident that we as a team can figure it out. There's lots of different ways to say it.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of influence and leadership that people are looking for. They're looking not for the one person with the title to have all the answers,
Mm-hmm.
but they know how to figure it out. And they can harness the people and the systems necessary to help solve that. And that to me is where a psychologically safe team, if they're
Mm-hmm.
operating in that environment, they can do incredible things. They can innovate, they can problem solve, they can do a lot of things that
Mm-hmm.
the non-psychologically safe team cannot do because people are reluctant to share. But boy, if you do it right as a leader, you don't need to have all the answers. You just need to know how to get them.
Yeah. And so I will double down on that with an adage from the Marine Corps in that your job as a leader is not to have all the answers. Your job is to know where to find those answers. And I'll never forget in air traffic control school, we're coming to the end and we have to give our final mission briefs and talk about where the radar is going and the TACAN and the Class E airspace and that how whether we're going to use panels or flares or whatever and like all that stuff. And one of the things that they had let slip throughout is that when you do this in the fleet, the operational Marine Corps, beyond the schoolhouse, you're going to have your subject matter experts with you to speak to their expertise, your radar chief, your tower chief, etc. And then they were like, yeah, it's really important that you lean on them for the successful execution of these missions. And your job is to not necessarily have the answers, but know where to find them if and when you come up short. I was like, okay. So, the Marine Corps being what I thought it was as a young, dumb lieutenant, I'm going to put this into practice. And I give my brief, and as they do, they catch you with your pants down. What about this contingency? Have you thought about this? And what happens if that? And I was like, that's what my radar chief's for. And I just gave this this very off the cuff response. And man, I got my ass chewed for it. My grades suffered as a result. And when it was all said and done, it's like, yes, that's the way it works out there, but you need to know this shit right now for the sake of this exam. I was like,
okay.
Roger that. Okay.
you were ahead of yourself just a little bit.
Yeah. It's like, you don't get to skip this part. It's like,
right.
That's
well,
okay.
And there are situations certainly where the leaders need to demonstrate a certain level of competence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, there are going to be those crisis situations where fast decision-making needs to happen. Ideally, we have time to collaborate and discuss and come to a good group conclusion that everybody can be happy with. But there are times when you just can't do that. I'm thinking most recently, you're coming from a military background. And of course, if there's a situation where you've got to act fast, you got to act fast. For those who are not involved in military, I'll use the most recent example that I can think of, which is the pandemic.
Sure.
When the pandemic hit, people were having to deal with something they had never dealt with before, ever. And so to be able to act quickly, to say, okay, what do we need to do? Not panic, but act decisively and quickly. How do you do that? And that's where you don't have time to then decide to create a psychologically safe place. You don't have the time. You've got to be able to move quickly. And that's why doing that ahead of time is part of the preparation that leaders need to employ in their teams and really empower them to do that. But yeah, there's so much to that. But yeah, ultimately, we don't need to know all the answers, but the more we gain, the more knowledge that we have. Yeah. And then we do have those and we can speak more confidently. In fact, there have been times, very quickly, because I know we're getting close on time here.
You're good. You're good.
There have been times when I have known the answer, but in an effort to instruct the individual, I withhold the answer. I said, let's talk about that. I'm not quite sure. I've got some
Yeah.
ideas, but what do you think? And
Mm-hmm.
then bring the team together, and then you can very gently guide the discussion and
Mm-hmm.
help them to discover the answer that you may already know. But
Yeah.
at that process of helping them discover it, it builds their confidence in their abilities to come up with solutions. And you can't spoil it by saying, I knew all the time. You do
Right.
that, you destroy it. Even if, people may ask, Shawn, did you know this, at the beginning? Well, I had some ideas, but you guys
Mm-hmm.
have come together with a really great solution. I really like it.
Yeah.
You've got to keep empowering them.
I think, and let me know your thoughts on this. Urgency has an inverse correlation with collaboration. Like if the fuse is really short and shit needs to happen right here, right now, I'm not asking for a whole lot of opinions.
Yeah, that's
However,
right.
what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I agree completely. There are times. And
Mm-hmm.
so and that's part of the leader's responsibility is to understand when is which required. Is this a situation that I've just got to make the decisions and go?
Yep.
Are there times when we need to slow down? Because there's no one perfect solution. That's part of the challenge with leadership and life in general. There are times to move quickly, have that sense of urgency, and okay, let's be decisive. Let's just move forward. And that is where, to go back to what you were referencing earlier, they wanted you in military school. They wanted you to know the information. Yes, out in the quote unquote real world, in the practical application, you have these avenues.
Yep.
But there's still value in having the knowledge.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
That enables us, when necessary, to move quickly. And that's why, again, as a leader, preparing yourself and your team for those kinds of situations is critical. Do it in peacetime, not wartime, right?
Oh, all day long, man, all day long. So I think this is a great place to land this plane. For anybody that's building a vision and is fortunate enough to not do it on their own and recognizes the necessity and or the benefit of doing this thing with others, there's going to be, the money in the bank, the success, all of that is a lagging indicator of a lot of the things that you've built, blown up, reconstructed, pivoted. How do you keep momentum and motivation for everybody that's along for the ride at these critical stages, especially when the organization hasn't achieved escape velocity yet? You're still pushing that boulder up the hill and have yet to see the fruits of your labor.
That's a great question. It's so tricky because for all of us, you're feeling it as the leader. As the leader, you are feeling the pressure, whether it's self-imposed, whether it's group imposed, whatever it is, you are feeling the pressure to succeed. But that right there is my answer to your question. What is success? What is failure? And to be clear on that and to really understand that success, in my view, in my way of defining things, is progress. Are we making progress towards the vision? Yes, there are times when we have a setback. There are times when we need to pivot. There are times you might need to blow up the boulder and start over. But most of the time, if we're at least moving up the hill, it may not be quite as fast as we thought it would, but if we're making the steps and we can visually see progress, that's when you celebrate the wins. And that is the definition of success. I don't know of any company, any individual, any organization that ever achieves maximum success and they stop.
Right.
There's new innovation to be had. You could look at any company. You could look at Ford Motors, who've been around for over 100 years, and look at all the evolution that they've had to change, but they're still here. And that's part of the process. And to me, that's part of the fun. That's part of saying, you know what? We've accomplished a lot. We've achieved some measure of success. What's on the horizon? There are too many examples of companies that existed for a long time, but they fell apart because they didn't innovate. They didn't look far
Yeah.
enough ahead and be ready to respond to changes in
Mm,
business, in the business world or the industry or whatever it may be.
yeah. I got one more question for you.
Yeah, fire away.
What are your thoughts on the idolization of these unicorn founders, the Zuckerbergs, the Musks, the Gates of the world, the Fords? You know, a lot of people don't know this, and it's interesting to me how little entrepreneurs are aware of this in terms of not to create limitations, but just an understanding of scale. In the eyes of the S&P, you're considered a small company until you eclipse $50 million in revenue. And it really begs the question, you know, if we're the dogs chasing the cars, what car are you chasing? You know, what if comparison is the thief of all joy, and you're trying to build the next Bezos level enterprise without and discounting the man that built it, you know, X amount of divorces, you know, at what cost? Right.
Good question. It goes back to what we talked about earlier about values
Mm-hmm.
and your purpose and your mission. For me, it is not to go make a bunch of money, period.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. In fact, making money is probably, some have argued, is probably too far down my list. But I'm really, I'm really more interested in the people that I
Mm-hmm.
surround myself with,
Yep.
and feeling like the organizational structure that I've created in my business is helping others. That is far more important to me. I want to make sure I have a good relationship with my wife and with my children and
Mm-hmm.
with extended family. All of that is very important to me. So that's how I structure my life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't worry as much. I used to. I used to. So you can, your audience can learn from me just a little bit. I
Sure.
used to think in an entrepreneurial mindset, I had to come up with truly unique ideas
Mm-hmm.
that what we call the blue water there, where you're out there. This has never been done before. And you've got the Bezos and the Gates and the Fords that are truly creating brand new technology and ways of doing things that have never been done before, never been seen before, never been
Mm-hmm.
heard of. I respect those that have that ability to do that, and the timing is such that they can execute on it.
Yep.
Not everybody's going to have that. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you can't carve out your own space and contribute and make a difference. If you want to use a car analogy, we've talked about the Ford.
Yep.
He's the one that created the assembly line, mass-produced cars. But look at how different cars have now spun off from that. We
Mm-hmm.
have luxury cars, we have economy cars, we have minivans, we have trucks, we have electric cars, we have all different kinds of things that have all spun off that one idea. So go find yours. Find
Mm.
your way of doing things different in a way that you can contribute,
Yeah.
that's not competing or comparing yourself to others, but hey, this is the way that Shawn Richards is doing this, and it's unique.
Yeah.
And that's your contribution is what's going to make it unique. The idea may not be, but your contribution and how you're going to do it, your level of customer service,
Yeah.
your ability to do it at a cheaper price, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
that's what you want to look for, is how do I make a difference in the world, and how do I impact the world? How do I influence the people for good in my
Yeah.
world? That's what you have to me, that's what you have to focus on.
Mm-hmm. Shawn, you're amazing, brother. I really appreciate you creating the time
Thank
and the
you.
space for this conversation. And I'm so grateful for your wisdom, brother. And I'm looking forward to collaborating
Yes.
beyond this conversation. Where can the audience go and learn more about Blue Sky and what you got going on?
But go to blueskybiz, consulting.com. You can also go to LinkedIn, of course, and find me, Shawn, Shawn J. Richards, middle initial J, Shawn J. Richards on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so that's a great place to connect with me. And I'm also leading out this idea of helping emerging leaders. You can go to thefirst50project.com and engage in a great program, and we will help you get going on your leadership journey. So I'd love to help you with that as well.
Oh, that's amazing. All of that's going to be in the show notes, man. So
Great. Thank you.
yeah, for sure. For everybody out there listening, to become the fittest leader possible, it requires integrity, courage, and ownership. But the foundation is built on alignment first. Let us help you in that journey. Head over to nextlevelpfc.com and we can get that conversation started. Until next time, we'll see you later.